the 4th of October 1900, Volume 4. Jesus suffers in chastising men because they are his images. After going through a day of privation and of scarce suffering, I felt convinced that the Lord no longer wanted to keep me in this state. However, obedience does not want to yield to me in this either, and she wants me to continue to stay, should I even croak and snuff out. May the Lord be always blessed, and may his holy and lovable will be done in everything. Then this morning on coming, blessed Jesus made himself seen in a pitiful state. He seemed to be suffering within his members, and his body was being torn into so many pieces that it was impossible to count them. With plaintive voice he was saying, "My daughter, what I feel, what I feel. These are unspeakable pains and incomprehensible to the human nature. It is the flesh of my children being lacerated, and the pain I feel is such that I feel my own flesh being lacerated." And while saying this, he moaned and grieved. I felt moved in seeing him in this state, and I did as much as I could to compassionate him and pray him to share his pains with me. He contented me in part, and I could just say to him, "Ah, Lord, did I not tell you, do not lay hand to chastisements, for what grieves me the most is that you yourself will be struck in your own members? Ah, this time there has been no way nor prayers to placate you." But Jesus did not pay attention to my words. He seemed to have something serious in his heart, which pulled him somewhere else. And in one instant he transported me outside of myself, taking me to the places where bloody slaughters were happening. Oh, how many sorrowful scenes could be seen in the world! How much human flesh, tormented, torn to pieces, trampled upon as one tramples the earth, and left unburied! How many tragedies, how many miseries! And what is more terrible ones are to happen. Blessed Jesus looked, and all moved began to cry bitterly. Unable to refrain, I cried with him over the sad condition of the world, so much so that my tears mixed with those of Jesus. After crying for quite a while, I admired another trait of the goodness of our Lord. In order to make me stop crying, he turned his face away from me. He dried his tears hiddenly, and then, turning back again with a cheerful face, said to me, "My beloved, do not cry. Enough, enough. What you see serves to justificare justitiam meum, justify my justice." And I, Lord, then I am right to say that my state is no longer your will. Why my state of victim if it is not given to me to spare your so very dear members, and to exempt the world from so many chastisements? And he, "It is not as you say. I too was victim. But even though I was victim, it was not given to me to spare the world all chastisements. I opened heaven for it. I released it from sin. Yes, I carried its pains upon myself. But it is justice that man receive upon himself part of those chastisements which he himself draws upon himself by sinning. And if it were not for the victims, he would deserve not only the simple chastisement, that is, the destruction of his body, but also the loss of his soul. So here is the necessity of the victims, whoever wants to avail himself of them, because man is always free in his will, can find the sparing of his pain and the port of his salvation. And I, Lord, how I would like to come before these chastisements advance more. And he, "If the world reaches such wickedness as to deserve no victim, surely I will take you." On hearing this, I said, "Lord, do not permit that I remain here present at such sorrowful scenes." And Jesus, almost reproaching me, added, "Instead of praying me to spare, you say you want to come. If I were to take with me all of my own of the poor world, what would happen? Indeed, I would have nothing to do with it any more, and I would no longer have any regard." After this I prayed for various people, He disappeared from me, and I returned inside myself. End of the reading.
The 4th of October, 1906, Volume 7. How upright operating is the breath that lights the fire of love. Having received the obedience to speak only a few words if anyone came, I was concerned I had failed the obedience, and added to that, blessed Jesus was not coming. Who can say the torment of my soul, thinking that he was not coming because I had committed sin? His privation is always a cruel torment, but the thought of having provided the occasion for it because of some fault is a torment that makes one go mad and kills with one blow. Then, after I struggled very much, he came and touched me 3 times, telling me, "My daughter, I renew you in the power of the Father, in my wisdom, and in the love of the Holy Spirit." What I felt as he was saying this, I am unable to express. Then he seemed to lie down within me, placing his head crowned with thorns upon my heart, and he added, "Upright operating keeps divine love always lit within the soul, while the operating which is not upright keeps putting it out. And if it tries to light it, now comes the breath of love of self and puts it out. Now human respect, now self-esteem, now the breath of the desire to please others. In sum, many breaths always putting it out. While with the upright operating, it is not many breaths that light this divine fire in the soul, but one continuous breath which keeps it always lit, and it is only the omnipotent breath of a God. End of the reading.
The 4th of October 1907, Volume 8. The Exaltation of the Cross. The cross grafts divinity to humanity. Continuing in my usual state of privation, and therefore with little suffering, I was saying to myself, not only of Jesus am I deprived, but also the good of suffering is taken away from me. Oh God, you want to put me to fire and the sword, and touch the things which are most dear to me, and which form my very life, Jesus and the cross. If I am abominable to Jesus because of my ingratitude, he is right in not coming. But you, O cross, what have I done to you that you have left me so barbarously? Did I perhaps not welcome you when you came? Did I not treat you as my faithful companion? I remember that I loved you so much that I could not be without you, and sometimes I even preferred you to Jesus. I didn't know what you had done to me that I could not be without you, yet you left me. It is true that you have done much good to me. You were the way, the door, the room, the secret, the light in which I could find Jesus. This is why I loved you so much. And now everything is over for me. While I was thinking of this, blessed Jesus came for just a little and told me, "Daughter, the cross is part of one's life, and only one who does not love his own life does not love the cross, because it was with the cross alone that I grafted the divinity to lost humanity. Only the cross continues redemption in the world, grafting anyone who receives it into the divinity, and if one does not love it, it means he knows nothing of virtues, of perfection, of love of God, and of true life. It happens as to a rich man who has lost his riches and is presented with the means to reacquire them again, and maybe even more. How much does he not love this means? Does he perhaps not put his own life into this means in order to find life again in his riches? Such is the cross. Man had become so very poor, and the cross is the means not only to save him from misery, but to enrich him with all goods. Therefore the cross is the richness of the soul. And he disappeared, while I remained more embittered, thinking of what I had lost. End of the reading.
The 4th of October, 1909, Volume 9. The thought of oneself must be stopped in order to do what Jesus does. Continuing in my state of affliction and loss of my blessed Jesus, I was all occupied in my interior, according to my usual way, with the hours of the Passion. The hour I'm talking about is that in which Jesus loaded the heavy wood of the cross upon himself. The whole world was present to me, past, present, and future. My whole imagination seemed to see all the sins of all generations which pressed and almost crushed benign Jesus. So much so that the cross was nothing but a twig of straw, a shadow of weight compared to all sins. And I tried to draw near Jesus, saying, "See my life, my good. I will stay here in the place of all of them." Do you see how many waves of blasphemies? I am here to repeat that I bless you for all. How many waves of bitternesses, of hatreds, of scorns, of ingratitudes, of so very little love? And I want to soothe you for all, love you for all, thank you, adore you, honor you for all. But my reparations are cold, meager, finite. You, who are the one who is offended, are infinite. Therefore, I want to render infinite also my reparations and my love. And in order to make it infinite, immense, endless, I unite myself with you, with your own divinity, even more with the Father and with the Holy Spirit. And I bless you with your own blessings. I love you with your love. I soothe you with your own sweetnesses. I honor you, I adore you, as you do among yourselves, divine persons. Who can tell all the nonsense I was saying? I would never end if I wanted to say everything. When I find myself in the hours of the Passion, I feel that together with Jesus, I too embrace the immensity of his work. And for all and for each one, I glorify God, I repair, I impetrate for all, and therefore I find it difficult to say everything. So while I was doing this, a thought told me, you are thinking about the sins of others. And what about your own? Think about yourself, repair for yourself. So I tried to think about my evils, my great miseries, the privations of Jesus caused by my sins, and getting distracted from the usual things of my interior, I cried over my great misfortune. At that moment, my always lovable Jesus moved in my interior and with sensible voice told me, "Do you want to arbitrate yourself? The work of your interior is not yours, but mine. You do nothing but follow me. The rest I do all by myself. The thought of yourself you must stop. You must do nothing but what I want, and I will take care of your evils and goods. Who can do more good to you, yourself or me?" And he showed himself displeased. So I began to follow him. But after a little while, as I reached another point on the way to Calvary, at which, more than anywhere else, I would penetrate into the different intentions of Jesus, a thought told me, not only must you stop the thought of sanctifying yourself, but also that of being saved. Don't you see that by yourself you're good at nothing? What good can ever come to you by doing this for others? Turning to Jesus, I said to him, "My Jesus, are your blood, your pains, your cross not there for me? I have been so bad that having trampled them under my feet with my sins, maybe you have exhausted them for me. But oh, please forgive me. And if you do not want to forgive me, leave me your will and I will be content. Your will is everything for me. I have remained alone without you and you alone can know the loss I suffered. I have no one. Creatures without you bore me. I feel I'm in this prison of my body like a slave in chains. At least for pity's sake, do not take your holy will away from me. So while thinking of this, I got distracted again from my interior, and Jesus again made me hear his voice louder and more imposing, saying, "You don't want to stop it? Do you want to waste my work in you?" I don't know. As if he had silenced my mind, I tried to follow him and to stop it. End of the reading.
The 4th of September 1913, Volume 12. The pains and the blood of Jesus run after man to heal him and save him. This morning my always lovable Jesus transported me outside of myself. He was in my arms, with his face so very close to mine, kissing me, slowly, slowly, as if he did not want me to perceive it. But after he repeated his kisses, I could not contain myself from returning him with my kisses. But as I was kissing him, a thought came to him, to kiss his most holy lips and try to suckle the bitternesses that he contained. Who knows if Jesus would surrender? Said and done. I kissed him and I tried to suckle, but nothing would come out. I prayed him to pour his bitternesses into me, and again I suckled with more strength, but nothing. It seemed that my Jesus suffered from the strains I was causing him. After I did it again with ardour for a third time, I felt the most bitter breath of Jesus coming into me, and I saw something hard across his throat which couldn't come out, and preventing him from letting out the bitternesses that he contained so as to pour them into me. And my afflicted Jesus, almost crying, told me, my daughter, resign yourself. Don't you see what hardness man put into me with sin, which prevents me from sharing my bitternesses with the one who loves me? Don't you remember when I told you, let me do? Otherwise man will reach the point of doing so much evil as to exhaust evil itself, not knowing what more evil to do. And you did not want me to strike man? Man is becoming worse and worse. He has accumulated so much pus within him that not even the war managed to let this pus out. War did not knock man down. On the contrary, it made him grow bolder. The revolution will make him furious. Misery will make him despair and will make him give himself to crime. All this will serve somehow to make all the rot which he contains come out. And then my goodness will strike man, not indirectly through creatures, but directly from heaven. These chastisements will be like beneficial dew descending from heaven, which will kill man, and he, touched by my hand, will recognize himself, will wake up from the sleep of sin, and will recognize his Creator. Therefore, daughter, pray that everything may be for the good of man. Jesus remained with his bitterness, and I remained afflicted because I was unable to relieve Jesus. I could just feel his bitter breath, and I found myself inside myself. But I felt restless. The words of Jesus tormented me. I could see before my mind the terrible future, and Jesus came back to calm me and almost to distract me, told me, how much love, how much love. Do you see? As I was suffering and pain was formed in me, I said, my pain, go, run, go in search of man. Help him, and may my pains be the strength of his pains. As I was shedding my blood, I said to each drop, run, save man for me. If he is dead, give him life, but divine life. If he escapes, run after him, besiege him from all sides, confuse him with love until he surrenders. As the wounds were being formed on my body under the scourges, I repeated, my wounds do not remain with me, but go in search of man. So everything I did and said I placed around man in order to save him. You too, for love of me, do not keep anything for yourself, but let everything run after man to save him, and I will look at you as another me. End of the reading.
All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. I will ever love and trust Him, in His presence daily live. I surrender all. I surrender all to Thee, my blessed Saviour. I surrender all.
The 4th of October 1923, volume 16. The divine will is everywhere with its immensity, all-seeingness and power, but for the majority of creatures it is not upon earth as their queen and life, what the creature must do in order to have it as life. I thought I was being destroyed by the pain of the privation of Jesus, with the sad thought that he would no longer come to me. Oh, how piercing it is to think that I would never see again the one who forms my life, my happiness, all my good. While I was thinking about this, my sweet Jesus moved in my interior and told me, "My daughter, how could I leave you if my will is imprisoned in your soul, and giving life to all your acts carries out its life as within its own centre? So my life is in one point of the earth. Ah, if this life of mine on earth was not there, my justice would pour itself out with such fury as to annihilate it." In hearing this, I said, "My Jesus, your will is everywhere. There is no place in which it is not. And you are saying that it is imprisoned in me?" And Jesus, "It is indeed everywhere with its immensity, with its all-seeingness and with its power. Like a queen, it subjects everything to itself, allowing no one to escape its empire. But as life in which the creature forms her life, to live her life in the life of my will and to form the life of the divine will on earth, it does not exist. For many who do not do it, it is if my will did not exist. It happens as if someone had water in his room but would not drink it, or fire but would not approach it in order to get warm, or bread but he would not eat it. In spite of the fact that he has within himself all these elements which can give life to man, by not taking them, he can die of thirst, cold, and hunger. Others take them rarely and are weak and sick. Others every day, and these are healthy and robust. Therefore, everything is in the possession of a good, whether the human will wants to take it and how it wants to take it. And depending on whether it uses it, so does it receive its effects. So is my will. In order to become life of the soul, she must make her will disappear in mine. Her will must no longer exist. My will must take over in all her acts as the prime act. And so it will give itself to the soul now as water to quench her thirst with its divine and celestial waters, now as fire, not only to warm her, but to destroy what is human in her and to rebuild in her the life of my will, now as food to nourish her and to make her strong and robust. Oh, how hard it is to find a creature who surrenders all her rights to give my will alone the right to reign. Almost all want to keep something of their own will for themselves. and therefore not reigning in them completely, my will is not able to form its life in all the creatures. End of the reading.
The 4th of October 1925, Volume 18. Repeating the same good serves to form the water with which to water the seed of the virtues. Everything that our Lord has done is suspended in the divine will in waiting to give itself to creatures. I was fusing myself in the most holy will of God, according to my usual way, and while going around in it to place my I love you upon all things, I wished that my Jesus would see or hear nothing but my I love you, or through this I love you of mine. And while repeating the sing-song of my I love you, I thought to myself, it shows that I am really a little child who can say nothing but the little stories she has learned. And then what good comes to me by repeating I love you, over and over again? But while I was thinking of this, my adorable Jesus came out from within my interior, showing my I love you impressed everywhere, in all of his divine person, on his lips, on his face, on his forehead, in his eyes, in the middle of his breast, on the back, and in the centre of the palms of his hands, on the tips of his fingers, in sum, everywhere. And with a tender tone he told me, my daughter, aren't you happy that none of the I love yous that have come out of you go lost, but all remain impressed in me? And then do you know what good comes to you by repeating them? You must know that when the soul decides to do some good, to exercise a virtue, she forms the seed of that virtue. By repeating those acts, she forms the water with which to water that seed in the earth of her heart. And the more often she repeats them, the more she waters that seed, and the plant grows beautiful and green, in such a way that it quickly produces the fruits of that seed. On the other hand, if she is slow in repeating, many times the seed remains suffocated, and if it comes out at all, it grows thin and never gives fruit. Poor seed, without enough water in order to grow. My sun does not rise over that seed to give it fecundity, maturity, and the beautiful colour to its fruits because it is not fecund. On the other hand, by always repeating those same acts, the soul contains much water with which to water that seed. My sun rises over that seed every time it sees it being watered, and it delights so much, knowing that it has much strength in order to grow, that it makes its branches reach up to me, and in seeing its many fruits, I pick them with pleasure, and I rest under its shadow. So repeating your I love you for me procures for you the water with which to water and form the tree of love. Repeating patience waters and forms the tree of patience. Repeating your acts in my will forms the water with which to water and form the divine and eternal tree of my will. Nothing can be formed with one single act, but with many upon many repeated acts. Only your Jesus contains the virtue of forming all things and the greatest things with one single act, because I contain the creative power. But the creature, by dint of repeating the same act, forms the good she wants to do, bit by bit. Through habit, that good or that virtue becomes her nature, and the creature becomes the possessor of it, and it forms all of her fortune. This happens also in the natural order. No one becomes a teacher by having read the vowels and the consonants once or a few times, but by repeating them constantly to the point of filling his mind, his will and his heart with all that science that is needed in order to be able to be a teacher to others. No one feels satiated if he does not eat bite after bite the food that is needed in order to be satiated. No one harvests the seeds if he does not repeat, who knows how many times, his work in his little field, and so with many other things. To repeat the same act is a sign that one loves, appreciates, and wants to possess that very act which he does. Therefore repeat. I repeat incessantly, without ever tiring. Afterwards I found myself outside of myself, and my sweet Jesus carried me around through all those places in which while being on earth he had operated, suffered, prayed, and also cried. Everything was in act, everything he had done. And my beloved good told me, my daughter, daughter of my supreme volition, my will wants to make you take part in everything. Everything you see is all the works I have done while being on earth, which my will keeps suspended within itself, because creatures do not dispose themselves to wanting to receive them, partly because they still do not know what I have. See, here are the prayers I did at night time, covered with bitter tears and with ardent sighs, for the salvation of all. They are all in waiting to give themselves to creatures, in order to give them the fruits which they contain. Daughter, enter into them. Cover yourself with my tears. Clothe yourself with my prayers, so that my will may accomplish in you the effects which are in my tears, prayers, and sighs. My will keeps as though lined up within itself the pains of my childhood, all of my interior acts of my hidden life, which are prodigies of grace and of sanctity, all the humiliations, glories, and pains of my public life, and the most hidden pains of my passion. Everything is suspended. The complete fruit has not been taken by creatures, and I am waiting for the ones who must live in my will, so that they may no longer be suspended, but may pour themselves out upon them to give them their complete fruit. Only the ones who must live in my will make my goods no longer be suspended. Therefore enter into my every act and pain, that my will may be fulfilled in you. Between you and me, I do not want suspended things, nor do I tolerate being unable to tell you what I want. This is why I want to find my own will in you, so that nothing may oppose what my will itself wants to give you. And while Jesus was saying this, I moved from one act of Jesus to another, and I remained as though transformed, covered with his own acts, prayers, tears, and pains. But who can say what I experienced? I hope that blessed Jesus will give me the grace to correspond and to fulfill his adorable will in me and in all. Amen. End of the reading.
The 4th of October 1931, volume 29. Our doubts, fears, are wounds to love. The divine will is one single act, the greatest of marvels, the night and the day of the soul. I felt oppressed because of the privations of my sweet Jesus, piercing nail that no one can remove or soothe to give a little relief to such a great martyrdom. Only his return, his lovable presence, can destroy as if by magic the nail and the pain, and it makes the purest joys arise that only Jesus knows how to give with his lovable presence. So I did nothing but abandon myself in the arms of the divine will, praying it to unveil for me him who I so much longed for. And while I was doing this, my lovable Jesus, like flash, illuminated my poor soul and told me, "Good daughter, courage. You oppress yourself too much, and your oppression causes you to reduce yourself to the extremes and casts you into the sad doubt that your Jesus does not love you and that maybe he will no longer come to you. No, no, I do not want this doubt. Oppressions, doubts, fears are wounds to my love and debilitate your love for me, depriving you of the impetus and the flight to run always toward me in order to love me. And once the continuous current of love toward me is broken, You remain like a poor, infirm one, and I no longer find the powerful magnet of your continuous love that draws me to you. Now, you must know how all the acts of my divine will, which are innumerable, reduce themselves all to one single point and act. This is the greatest marvel of our Supreme Being, to form, to possess, to see all possible and imaginable acts in one single act. In the same way, all the acts done by the creature in our will reduce themselves to one single act. Now, in order to have the virtue of enclosing all acts within one single act, she must form and possess within herself the continuous love, my perennial will, that will give origin to all the acts and will make them start from within the virtue of one single act. See then, all the acts you have done in my will have unified together in one single act, and they form your cortege, your support, your strength, your light that never goes out. And they love you so much that, making themselves arms, they keep you as the dear apple of my fiat's eye, because in it were they formed and received life. Therefore, do not oppress yourself. Enjoy the fruits of my volition, and if you see that I delay my coming, wait for me with patient love. And when you least expect it, I will surprise you and will make my usual little visit, and I will be happy to find you in my own will, always in act of loving me. After this, he added, my daughter, our divine being is great, immense, powerful, etc. This does not cause much marvel, because all of these divine qualities of ours are by nature and form the whole entirety of our Supreme Being. So by nature, we are immense and in the power, immense in the love, in the beauty, in the wisdom, in the mercy, and so forth. And since we are immense in all things, everything that comes out of us remains in the nets of our immense divine qualities. Now, what causes the greatest of marvels is to see the soul who lives in our divine will, who encloses in her little act the powerful and immense act of her Creator. To see, as though lined up in the little acts of the finite being, the immense love, the immense wisdom, the infinite beauty, the boundless mercy, the interminable sanctity of He who created her. The little enclosing the great is more marvellous than the great enclosing the little. For our greatness, it is easy to embrace everything, to enclose everyone, nor does it take any art or industry, because from our immensity, no one can escape us. But for the little to enclose the great, it takes an art of its own, a divine industry that only our power and our great love can form in the creature. If we do not place of our own on her own, she could not do it. Therefore, the living in our divine fiat is the marvel of marvels. It is the greatest of prodigies. The soul renders herself so striking and artful that it is an enchantment to see her. It can be said that in each little act of hers concurs a miracle of ours. Otherwise, the little enclosing the great could not happen. And our goodness is such that it takes greatest delight and waits with so much love for the creature to give it the occasion of letting it perform this divine art of continuous miracles. Therefore, may you take to heart the living in our will more than anything. In this way, you will be more content, and we more content than you. And you will be in our creative hands, our field of action, and our continuous work. If you knew how much we like our work in the souls who live in our will, you would be more attentive never to go out of it. Then I continued my abandonment in the fiat, though accompanied by a sadness because of so many afflicting things that crowd my poor mind that it is not necessary to say on paper. Certain intimate secrets it is right only for Jesus and him alone to know. And my beloved Jesus repeated with a most tender tone, "My daughter, you must know that just as nature has the night and the day, so the soul has her night, the dawn, the daybreak, the full midday, and her sunset. The night calls for the day and the day for the night. It can be said that they call for each other. Now the night of the soul are my privations, but for one who lives in my will, these are precious nights, not of slothful rest, of restless sleep. No, no, but night of operative rest, of peaceful sleep. In fact, as she sees the night coming, she abandons herself in my arms to lean her tired head upon my divine heart and to hear my heartbeats so as to draw new love during her sleep and say to me while sleeping, I love you, oh my Jesus. The sleep of one who loves me and lives in my will is like the sleep of a little girl who, as she feels her eyes closing for sleep, half asleep, calls, Mama, Mama, for she wants her arms and her maternal breast in order to sleep. So much so that as soon as the tiny little one wakes up, the first word is Mama. The first smile, the first gaze is for her Mama. Such is the soul who lives in my will. She is the tiny little girl who, as the night comes, looks for him whom she loves to draw new strength and new love in order to love me more. And oh, how beautiful it is to see her seeking, desiring, longing for Jesus in her sleep. This seeking, desiring, and longing call for the dawn, form the daybreak, and make the full day arise that calls for the sun. And I rise and form the course of the day and its full midday. But know, my daughter, that here on earth things alternate, only in heaven is it always full day, because my presence is perennial amid the blessed. So as you see that I am about to leave you, do you know where I stay? Inside of you. After having instructed your soul, giving you my lessons before the light of my presence, so that you might comprehend them well and that they might serve you as food and as work during the day, I withdraw and form the sunset, and hidden within you during the short night, I make myself actor and spectator of all your acts. And while for you it seems nighttime, for me it is the most beautiful rest, since after I have spoken to you, I take rest in my own word, and the acts that you do serve me as lullabies, as refreshment, as defense, and as sweet relief for my ardors of love. Therefore let me do. I know when the night or the day is necessary for you and for me in your soul. What I want is perennial peace in you, so that I may carry out what I want. If you are not at peace, I feel molested in my work, and with difficulty, not with ease, I go along carrying out my designs. End of the reading.
The 4th of October 1935, Volume 33. All the glory, the honour, is in being able to say with deeds, I am a continuous act of will of my Creator. Necessity of diversity of offices and actions. I was doing my round in the divine will in order to search out all its acts done in creation, so as to place my little I love you and to unite myself with all created things in order to glorify my Creator and be able to say, I am at my place of honour. I do my office. I am a continuous act of divine will. I can say that I am nothing, I do nothing, but I do everything because I do the divine will. But while I thought this my highest good, Jesus, making me his brief little visit, all goodness, told me, my blessed daughter, every created thing has a distinct office that it occupies, and although the will of all is one, yet they all do not do the same thing. It would not be order nor virtue of divine wisdom that one created thing would repeat what another one does. But since one is the will that dominates them, the glory that is obtained by one, the other gives to me. Because all the substance that they possess, and the good and the value with which they are invested, is that they can say, I am a continuous active will of my Creator. Greater glory, honour, virtue he could not give me than being a single act of divine will. So much so that the little blade of grass, with its littleness, the little space that it occupies on the earth, it seems that it does nothing. No one looks at it. And yet, because my will wanted it so, it does not seek to do more than what a blade of grass can do. By doing my will, it equals the glory that the sun gives me, that with so much majesty rules over the earth, such that it can be called continuous miracle of the whole creation. And since all created things are united among themselves, the sun, with all its majesty, with its light, it kisses and warms the little blade of grass. The wind caresses it, the water waters it, the earth gives the little place for where to form its little life. And yet, what is a blade of grass? One can say nothing. But since it possesses my will, it will have its virtue of doing good to the human generations, because having created everything for love and in order to do good to creatures, so everything has a secret virtue of giving the good that they possess. See therefore that everything is, in doing my will, to never come forth from its divine and interminable enclosures. Already by doing my will, although it seems that one does nothing, yet it is not true. Already one finds himself together with the divine operation, and one can say, what God does, I do. And does this seem little to you? God does everything, and the soul takes part in everything, such that it is not the diversity of actions or of offices that the creature can say that she does great things, but my will that confirms the nothing. It places her in the divine order and places there its image as seal of its works. In regard to the diversity of offices and of actions, rather it is order, harmony of my infinite wisdom. Even in heaven there are diversity of choirs of angels, diversity of saints. One is a martyr, one is virgin, one is confessor. On earth my providence maintains so many diverse offices. One is king, one is judge, one is priest, one is people, one commands, one is dependent. If all were doing one single office, what would become of the earth? A complete disorder. Oh, if everyone knew that only my divine will knows how to create the greatest things, and although they would be little and insignificant, oh, how they would all be content, and each one would love his little place, the office in which God has placed him. But since they let themselves be lorded over by the human volition, they would want to give of themselves to make the great actions that they cannot do. Therefore they are always discontent with the conditions or the place in which divine providence has placed them for their good. Therefore content yourself to do the little united with my will, and not the great without it. Even more, because being immense, it will find you in all its acts, and you will find yourself in its love, in its power, in its works, in a way that you will not be able to do anything without it, and it will not be able to do anything without you. This is why, by living in my volition, such prodigies run together that it gives of the incredible. the nothing of the creature at the mercy of the all, the nothing prey of a will that can do everything. What thing will this nothing not do? She will do works worthy of a supreme fiat. Therefore the most beautiful, most solemn, most pleasing act for us is the nothing of the creature given freely to us, in order to let us do what we want. End of the reading. There are no more readings today. Have a blessed day.